them.
Give me a second. Here we go.
You know this, don't you, Mom? All hail the power of Jesus' name, let angels prostrate fall. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. He's seen of Israel's chosen race, he ransomed from the fall. Hail him who saves you by his grace, and crown him Lord of all. Hail him who saves you by his grace, and crown him Lord of all. Let every tribe and every tongue before him prostrate fall. And sing universal song, the crowned Lord of all. And shout in universal song, the crowned Lord of all. Oh, that with yonder sacred throne we had his feet made fall, and join the everlasting song and crown him Lord of all. Join in the everlasting song and crown him Lord of all. Father, Jesus, praise.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to come out to your house. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your many, many blessings. And dear Lord, I pray that you'll be with Andrew as he leads, Dave when he teaches, and Mandy brings the message. And everything we say and do be done to honor Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Just a couple things I want to point out about this song. It sounds kind of old, but you know, here's the thing. There is one Lord and one Savior, and that's Jesus Christ. And before Jesus will every knee bow and every tongue confess that he is the Lord. He is the master of the entire universe. There is no one who is higher than Jesus. Our faith is not in a Christian God, but in the God who is God over all, including the Christians. Does that make sense? The song is this: crown him Lord of all. He is the Lord, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Every single power in the universe is subject to him. The only freedom that the rulers have to rule are delegated powers. You know what at any time, he can change his mind and revoke the powers that those folks have to rule. We've got folks walking around like peacocks thinking they're somebody when they're operating under the authority of God and not even realizing or recognizing it. And one day, he's going to say, like a library book, oh, it's past due, it's time to pay back, to give back the power that's been given. This world will be brought back under the control, complete control of God. And we will be there, and we'll be shouting and praising as in the New Jerusalem, sitting upon the throne. And we see that royal diadem, that crown be placed on his brow. He's crowned as king over it all. Sitting in the seat of David, he's going to be King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I do like that song. It's a little hard to sing for sometimes, but it's got some good meaning to it. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Dave, come on up here. Are we still in Ephesians 6?
Yeah.
All right. Make sure you put the microphone on so we all can hear you. We know that you're kind of a bashful speaker. What's that?
I don't know if that's good or bad. You got to speak up.
Well, the microphone, you don't have to, that's the point. Can you hear me?
Huh?
Let me turn it off something.
Benny, is he unmuted?
Which one is it?
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, it's unmuted. Should be. Should be. Should be.
Turn it on before.
Yeah, unmute.
That's a good place to be. There we go.
There we go.
Can you hear me now, preacher?
I can hear you before, but now I hear you.
Oh, man, I lost my place. Here we go. Here we go. Last 2 weeks, we've been talking about families and responsibilities of the members of the family. The husband and the wife. And then we talked about the children last week. Responsibility of children and how we should raise our children, how children should be raised in a godly house, which is true. But I've seen children raised in a godly house that don't turn out to be real godly. Once a child gets their mind, sometimes they stray off into the world. But the Bible says that we're raised godly anyway because they'll come falling and looking to come back. And we hope that's being true about children. This week we're going to talk about the relationship between an employee and an employer. And if it goes far enough, we're going to talk about the armor of God. And I've got some illustrations I would like to present when we get to the armor of God. I want to thank Brother Scott Bowman for these illustrations. He came to preach with for us one Sunday morning, and somehow that it was just him and I that showed up. And so he left me these illustrations. He knew I was teaching Ephesians, and I think they're good illustrations. They're good illustrations for a soldier, and they're good illustrations for us. When we start talking about the armor of God, the armor of Christ, and so I'll present them and pass them around. I've got to find my place. There's so many markers, I don't know where I'm at. Here I am. We're starting chapter 5. I've been reading so much in we're starting chapter 6, verse 5. I've been reading so much in verse 10, which starts the armor of God this morning, that I forgot that we were in 5. But Ephesians 6 and 5. Ephesians 6, verse 5, it says, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters, according to the flesh. And we're talking about the masters here on earth. We're talking about the fleshly masters. We're not talking about spiritual. We're not talking about God. We're talking about our bosses that's on this earth. But we're to be obedient to them. Well, when I was walking also didn't understand this, but I got a little bit of better understanding when I got saved of how I should act. And we should be proficient in our jobs. We should do our jobs. And we should honor them. We should give them the respect that they deserve. People don't understand. I listen on TV and they talk about raising the taxes on the wealthy because the wealthy wasn't paying their share. If it wasn't for the wealthy creating these jobs, a poor man can't create a job, but a wealthy man can create a job that covers thousands of people, and that brings payment. That helps everything that we do. We should respect him. We should honor him for what he's doing and who he is. honor him as we honor God, is basically what the Bible tells us.
That's exactly what I've said 1,000 times, is that I've never been given a job by a poor man.
No, the poor man can,
Somebody who's poorer than me usually doesn't have the money to pay me to do something. You know what I mean?
well, you know, the thing about it is that we do have small businesses that started by individuals that might have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 employees. But a rich man can open a manufacturing plant and manufactures that opens up to thousands of people.
Right.
And well, I hate the rich, I hate the rich. But if it wasn't for the rich man, if it wasn't for their capability, their knowledge of growth, then we wouldn't have jobs and we would die on the branch. I mean, it would start to death. The period. But people want to focus. Go ahead, Richard.
We live in a time today where it's popular for folks to be socialists, for folks to be against what they call the evils of capitalism.
Right.
And they don't understand that all that capitalism is freedom. If you have something that I want, and I have something that you want, and we agree to trade it, we just become capitalists. That's all capitalism is a free exchange of stuff. Anytime that the government or any other organization, that always usually comes from the government, when they get involved in that transaction, freedom has to go by the wayside. And there's this desire to make everybody the same, but people aren't the same.
No.
Even if you have 2 people that have the same capabilities, they may not have the same temperaments. I've worked in front of a computer screen all day. There are some people that if they sit for 2 hours in front of a computer screen, they'd want to claw their eyeballs out. They have to be moving, they have to be outside and doing stuff. If I'm not the kind of person, I'm not the kind of person that's really handy with my hands. I'm not the kind of person that can, build something out of nothing. I kind of have the knowledge of how to do it, but how to put it together, it looks like a drunken 5-year-old built it when I'm doing something. My point is that everybody has different temperaments. And like you said, the idea that people say, I hate the rich, I hate the rich. Rich folks can fall into temptation like anyone else can. They're not better or worse than anybody else. They're just people with money. But envy is an evil. Hating somebody because they have more than you is envy, and that's sin. So you're exactly right about that idea. Well, I hate the rich, I hate the rich. You don't understand what you're saying. And really don't.
That's just basically saying I hate people because people are people, it doesn't matter. But, God says he's the respect of no man, and there's a reason for it, because we're all even in God's eyes. On this earth, we might not be evil. You got the rich and the poor. But if it wasn't for the rich, the poor couldn't survive. You have to have the rich, because they're the ones that create. They create the jobs. They create things for men. They create money. God created the heavens and earth. He created all it was, and He gives them the ability to create through their money if they use it wisely. I don't know if a rich man, or say the rich man that sits on his money. He usually puts it out there to open it up for jobs to create. He wants more wealth. Of course, that's one of his enemies is greed and wealth to collect more. But we're not going to go into that. That's not what it's about. This is about that we should respect him. And God talks about the rich man coming into the church and how people are having to respect him. And talks about the beggar, how he comes in, and they want to kick him out because of who he is. But we should respect all men equally.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether they're the poorest beggar on the street or the richest man that you've ever met. Well, they should be but it's for their creation. If it wasn't for them, like you said, poor men, they might be able to employ 1 or 2 or 3 people or 10 people, but A rich man can open a manufacturing business and employ thousands and thousands of people.
There's an awful lot of people who started out as poor men, because of their work and their diligence and their effort, have become rich men. And other people benefited because of that. We shouldn't hate the rich because they're rich, and we shouldn't hold the rich as somebody special, as though they're somehow better than everybody else. They're not. They're just people, and people with more money, and we need to have that balance, and exactly what you said. But in our culture today, this, why in the world should so-and-so have that much money? It ain't none of your business how much money somebody has. And, I mean,
But you know, people measure richness in money. And that's one form of richness, but there's many, many different richness on the face of this earth other than money, you know what I mean? And I've heard people say, well, that's because you ain't got a bunch of money, and you don't. Look, I don't need a bunch of money to be happy.
no.
You know, and happiness is the key to move forward. If we're happy in Christ, we're rich with everything we have. I leave it on God to take care of me. He gives me what I need. I mean, it's not that I'm poor. My cupboards has got food that I got a warm bed. I've got everything that a man needs in life, and I'm content with it. I'm happy with that. And I don't seek riches. And I don't need the riches to know a lot of money. But that's really, I don't think the four riches of money will make you happy, because you're always worried about your money. You're always worried about it taken, and somebody else is going to get it, and money leads to nothing. Money is just a tool to get you through life if you use it as a tool, and try not to collect. See how much you collect in your life, you're a lot better off. You're a lot happier. And that's their problem. They've got problems as well as we do. We might not have money sometimes to pay bills or struggle, but God gets us through. The bills seem to get paid and things seem to work out. And I praise and I thank Him each and every day, but it was happening before that. Now, I can't say it in the sense that it was good. I didn't have the feeling of God in my heart. I didn't have the peace. I didn't have the security of heaven. I didn't have nothing that God had. But He blessed me with a job, and I did work at it. And, you know, man, just keeps wanting to reach for more and more and more.
The idea that somehow through material goods you can make your life better is a lie. You're not going to be happier with more money.
No.
And you're not going to be happier with less money. You're just, money is, like you said, it's a tool.
It's a tool.
When Rebecca and I first got married, I think that we made a total of $10,000 our first year as a married couple, combined. We didn't make, I mean, even back then that was nothing. I mean, we had nothing. But God has blessed us over the years, and now we have the ability to live comfortably, and we're able to, you know, provide not only for our family, but for the church and to help others, and we have a little bit extra we can help with. But the money is not what's important. Service to God is.
You know, and you're exactly right. Money, I'd rather have. We got this song of all the riches and kings, and I'd rather be, you know, I'd rather love Jesus. I'd rather follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And I've learned in my life that, you know, it took me a long time to get there, but once I accepted Jesus, I learned that there's no life like it. I couldn't live another life. I don't want another life. Satan keeps trying to bounce me around a little bit, but he does us all. He doesn't want us to have that life. But Jesus has been good to me. But anyway, it says, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh. And I like this. I looked at this, and I've seen something I've never seen before. We talked about that. With fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart, as unto God. As unto God. We're to be obedient to them just as we will be obedient to God. I kept looking at that, and they're not talking about the being fear and trembling unto God, but we're to have fear and trembling and singleness of your heart as unto God, as we would respect God, as we would treat God, as we would honor God. And
Yeah.
that is, I got that and it just sort of blew me away.
When you apply this, man, it hits right between the eyes, don't it?
Yes, it does. And when I seen that, I said, well, we're to honor him as unto God, as we honor God.
If you're working for Jesus, would you come in late and leave early?
Well, I wouldn't know. I didn't anyway, but I was thinking about being late for church this morning. I didn't appreciate that.
No, I didn't mean from that
But
standpoint.
Bobby, I had to stop and get Bobby again and wait for him to get in the car.
That's why I got the car didn't like me, so I just stopped. Said, "You way too much, get out."
No, what I meant is that you've got Christians who say, oh, I love Jesus,
But they do.
and they don't do nothing at work. I've worked with several of them. And the bad thing is, they love to advertise that they're a Christian. They'll put a poster up in their cubicle about how wonderful Jesus is. And then you look at them, and half the time they're spending surfing the internet, not doing their job. They come in late, they leave early, they take 15 different breaks a day, and you can't get them to do the work. They're shiftless. But you ask them, would you do that for Jesus? Oh, no, I wouldn't do that for Jesus. If I was working for the Lord, man, I made sure I got there on time and all this. This right here says to our bosses, we should submit to them and work for them, just like we're working for God.
Like we're working for God, and I seen that, and I said, as unto. They're not talking about that, and we should fear God and with truth, and we should honor him by obeying him. But I seen it for the first time. I said, whoa. But in our hearts, that if we're true Christians, we should have that in our heart anyway, to be obedient to what our bosses would want to do, what they want to do. Whether we're digging ditches or sitting behind a computer, or whether we're in whatever job we choose to do, we should do it at the best we could, and with the pride of God. We hope God in our heart as we're doing it for him. And it should be. I'm not boasting, but I always try to do a good job. I always try to make my work right. If something was worth doing, it's worth doing good. I wasn't a shabby employee. I really wasn't. But I've seen guys that was, and I've seen Christians that they would just milk the clock in any way they could. After I got saved, I heard about a Christian now Memorial there when I was valeting cars, and I never got a chance to meet him. He was an elderly man. They said he was a godly man, but he was always sitting around with 3 or 4 or 5 of the lost and telling jokes, and said he loved to joke and laugh and party. And I wondered as a new Christian what kind of man this was. Of course, I never got a chance to meet him, but that speaks for itself when I even describe that. It sells something about that individual. Even serving God and not serving God. You know what I mean?
See, the fear and trembling, the way that I work, I give respect and honor to my boss, regardless of who they are. And even though I know they'll be okay with them, I'll ask them whatever it is, can I have off on this day, whatever. I know they're gonna say yes.
But that's just respectful.
But that's the fear and trembling, it shows respect.
Right.
I have some people who tell me that my work ethic is too strong, that I work too much, and I need to just calm down a little bit. You don't need to work all the time and all this, but if Jesus came down and said, "Once you run this computer system," would I do it differently than if my boss told me that when we run a computer system?
No, you shouldn't. But the thing about it is, you accepted the responsibilities of this job. You accepted the responsibilities. We as Christians, and anybody that's got a job, I learned that you talk to your dad's dad, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, whoever, you say, look, I just work there, I don't mean nothing to it. But now taking on a job is taking on a responsibility.
Yeah.
And when you take on a responsibility, you should work as that you're working for Jesus. And you took on the responsibility of your home, your marriage, your life, your kids, men take on responsibilities, and we should work according to our responsibilities.
Now, the caveat to this is, some people turn their jobs into their religion. And they serve their job more than they serve Christ. They serve their job more than they do their family. Everything else takes a back seat. And it's a hard balance, especially if you have a demanding job, on how to try to balance everything. But we also need to remember that while we have a job, it's a job. And for instance, if my job gets where they're wanting too much from me, and I decide, well, I don't have time to be here at the church or whatever, it's okay for me to leave that job, get it done.
Well, look, I'll put this in perspective with me, and then we'll move on unless you've got a comment. And, you know, I had a job to where there was times that I had to work not only my 40 hours a week, but I'd work 40 hours overtime or 50 hours overtime in a week, meaning I was hardly ever home. And I would run 2 or 3 weeks in a row. But it wasn't something that I did on a continuous basis. It wasn't something that I seeked after. It was something that came with the job as part of the job, and I had to do it when I had to do it. But a person that takes his job and turns it around and does nothing but to seek a job, usually there's a reason there. There's a greed for money, they're hating family, or there's something there that causes them to want to linger in that job instead of be with their family. I look forward to my family time. I look forward after my 8 or 9 hours a day of going home and being with my family, or taking them off for the weekend and doing things. I look forward to that. That's rest, relaxation. That gets me back to peak performance for Monday morning. But there was times that I had to be at home. There was times that I was on call, I could go nowhere. But that was part of the job that I knew that I took when I took the job.
Right.
And I didn't make the job my work, my home. There was times I had to go off for training for several days. I went through a lot like everybody else. But I didn't turn the job into my life. And when it came time to leave, I didn't. I ended up leaving. Or there were several jobs. I've had more than one. Anyway, number 6, not with eye service as man pleasers, but as a servant of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart. Not working when the boss is standing watching you. You know, everybody's standing around, boss comes in the room, man, you got a busy man. You know, see, these guys work so hard in their life. Boss goes out and says, wait a minute, we was gonna roll, what happened? They were just there to please the boss while the boss was watching. I guess they thought they had something to gain. They thought to get a pay raise. I don't know, but you know, that was just a natural attitude. It's like when you see the cop and you're going along at 35 miles an hour and you see the cop, you slow down the corner.
I had a cop once tell me, he says, I hate that. Every time people see me, they slow down. He says, I can't even drive through a parking lot. Everybody's slowing down in the parking lot. Says, dude, I'm not going to pull you over. Move. But I think about that eye service. It reminds me when I was in the reserves. We were in a new unit, the 302nd Field Hospital. And things are a little bit disorganized. And so we were there for drill weekend, and they didn't have everything lined out like it was supposed to be. So there was a lot of time to stand around and not do anything. But we stand around, tell stories, and tell jokes, and laugh and joke. You see an officer come, you pull out that training book and pretend like you're having a class. And this is how to do a one-man litter, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you're not. Anyway, where were we in the story? That was eye service.
Yeah,
They weren't actually trying to train or do anything else. They wanted to look good for the boss while the boss was looking. And the second the boss turned, they go right back to the same thing.
But that's the nature of men. They're lazy, and then they want the boss to see that they're working. But you know, we shouldn't be, as Christians, we don't have that nature. We shouldn't have that nature of the world to do as the world. We should do as the Lord would want us to do, as we would do. You know, you ever ask somebody, you know, if the Lord come next week, will you change your ways? They say yeah or no. If they say yeah, then they know they're not doing right.
If Jesus is watching you do your job, would you do it any differently? Because he is.
Yeah, he is watching.
Now, that we are not, I don't worry so much about pleasing. I try to do what my boss has to do. But my primary goal is not to make my boss happy, but to make Jesus happy. If I make Jesus happy with my service, I've never had to worry about a boss being happy with me. You know what I mean?
If you as a Christian is doing the will of God, and you want to work, you're going to make your boss happy because you're doing the will of God and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing when you're supposed to be doing it, where you're supposed to be doing it. You're not downstairs loafing and joking and smoking at the Coke machine. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We can't just fall in with the world, and the story I told about this Christian man was true, but he would fall in with 4 or 5 worldly guys, and they would stand around and doing nothing. And I never seen him. I don't know what happened to him. He's just sort of disappeared off the job. Maybe that was good for me to know or meet him. But I wonder what kind of Christian he was, to fall in with a bunch of worldly guys, 4 or 5 of them, and go to the boss and stand around and smoke and joke and see that high up there. You know what I mean? But he was living as the world was living. He wasn't living as God would have him to live. And I felt that from the very beginning. So, but you're exactly right.
I think that our testimony is damaged if we're lazy. Our testimony as Christians is damaged if we.
But you gotta go a little bit deeper than that. One Christian being seen by 100 people, that testimony damages all the Christians that come their way.
Yeah.
It's not just a reflection on him, so well, them Christians, how lazy they are. Watch that guy over there. He's a Christian. Watch him. Oh man. You know, but it damages the testimony of all the Christians. And I think about that, man. I try not to bumble up. I try not to mess up. I try not to do nothing wrong. I try to walk right beside of God. I try to live right. Because I know that if I'm being watched, then I'm being judged. If I'm being judged, that means that it reflects other people.
Bob, have you run across any Christians who had less than stellar work ethics?
Yeah, I was still full of them. I don't know how they say I believe in God and I believe in Jesus and they can smoke because that's the way to do it. I'm like, I don't think so.
But you know, it says down here, doing the will of God from the heart. This should automatically come from the heart because this is the will of God. I pray for the will of God in my life. We each should pray for the will of God in our lives, which means it's going to come from the heart. It's going to be doing what God would have us to do and have us to be. If it comes from the heart, it should come automatically. It should come with love. It should come the way God would have it to come to Him. You're forcing yourself not to be proper if you're going against the will of God, if you're a Christian. Verse 7. With good will doing service, as to the Lord and not to men. Not trying to please men, but we're trying to do the will of God, to please Him. And we should please God. I pray every day that I please God. We should please Him in our walk, in everything that we do. Verse 8, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. You know, you might not get recognized on this earth for the good things you do. You might not get recognized, and they call them masters. They talk about the slave days. You know, but you might not get recognized by them. You know, they might not care how good of a dish or how deep it is, or they might not care the hard work that you did for them and stuff. But your reward is going to be given to you in heaven. God hasn't forgotten what you did. He hasn't forgotten who you are. He hasn't forgotten the things that you did. If you're doing it for Him, you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for God. The man's paying you a good dollar. Verse 8. And you masters do the same thing unto them, forbearing, threatening, knowing that your master also in heaven, neither is there respecter of persons with him. So he's going from the employee to the employer, telling her, look, be good to your people. They respect you. You know, you don't have to beat them. You don't have to whip them down. You don't have to accuse them. You don't have to steal from them. You don't have to be mean to them.
I mean, there are times that as a boss, you have to be firm with people. There are times you have to say, this is the way it's gonna be. And then have consequences when they don't do it.
You know, that's in a job, you have to set up a structure in any job, just like you set up a structure in your home. Just like you look at your home, your child, and say, look, if you do this, there's gonna be consequences. So structure has to be built on the workforce for each and every employee, because not every employee, not every human being, not every man that walks on this job is gonna have the same time. They're gonna see how much they can bribe and how much they can steal, and whatever they can do to get away with, and they're gonna look like the best employee on the job in front of the boss as long as they can. But I'm just using that for an example. But you've got to have structure in everything that we do. There has to be structure. And of course, this is what the world rebels against. They don't like law enforcement, the structure of law enforcement. They don't want no kind of structure at all, so they can. I think that's just basically so they can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, that's exactly
Take
it.
whatever they want to take, destroy whatever they want to destroy without any consequences. But God set the structure. God set structure. He set bounds, and we've got to live in the structures and boundaries that God has set us in. Period. If you don't like it, well, you know.
I mean, when you think about, do the same things unto them, forbearing, threatening, knowing that your master is also in heaven, neither is a respecting persons. So, number one, we as bosses should be fair. We shouldn't have favorites. We shouldn't treat this person differently than that person. We should be fair in administrations. We should treat others like we want to be treated. If there's a circumstance, there's something came out that we have to monitor these certain jobs for the COVID dashboard. And then it's 7 days a week. Now, I have been doing it by myself. And it came down, my boss's boss looked at me and says, I don't want you doing it by yourself, Andrew. He specifically said those words. So I had to split it up amongst my team. So we each take a week to do the job. And I put myself in that just as much as they are. Because I'm not above them, I work with them, you know what I mean? I try to treat folks working for me with care and respect, and if they need to talk, they can talk. If they need something, I try to get it for them.
Using the service.
Yeah.
Right. And they taught me, when I became a sergeant, that every job that every subordinate under you did, that you had to know how to do, and you did it. You did it with fairness and goodness and the best that you possibly do. And to grow in that, you was no better than they were, and whenever they did at any level, you had to throw in and become a part of that. You knew it instinctively. And bosses, I think a boss should basically be that way, that every job that he assigns, and I'm not talking about the owners, I'm not talking about the overseer, you know, I'm talking about bosses that's with you. Let me put it this way, I was in housing, and I was training a man, and I was training a man to be my boss. He never went through the ranks. He never started from the basics. He just come in and say, this is going to be your new boss training for my. And so I got that responsibility. And I was thinking about that when we was talking about that. But you should be fair. You should not hesitate to jump in and help. Hesitate to give a hand. You know what that man's going through. You know how hard this particular job is. You set a man on, you know, maybe 3 men or 2 men are trying to. You should be right there, but you should know how to do it. You should have trained as you was coming in, and I think training had a lot to do with it. But bosses, and again, I think about back in slavery, how they would be slaves. The punishment was probably, I think punishment just fit the time. It was a hard time, and 2,000 years ago, and it was hard punishment. But you got to have structure and everything. So people need to I can't say that every single one of them I knew exactly the way I should have, but I worked my way up through into it. And I knew my jobs. And as far as sitting behind my desk and not helping, that wasn't me. I was always ready out there to help to work a little bit. I'm one of them guys like helping, that likes it behind me.
It's like, with me, I try to treat all my people with kindness, compassion, and care, try to take care of them. And when I do that, they take care of me. I've been supervisor for 5 years in the section that I am now. I can count on one time I had to pull an employee aside and reprimand. Number one, you start with people who actually want to do their job. But the thing is that when you treat people with respect, generally they'll treat you with respect too.
Well, you know, it used to be, but it's got anymore. We've got and this was starting to work well when I left the workforce. There's a lot of people that has no respect for nothing or nobody. They can care less. Just because you've been here 5 years, don't give you the right to tell me what, man, don't come over with this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it happens more and more. It used to be a man going to a job, he's happy to have a job, and he respected the people who was there because they'd been there, and he looked to move up and forward, but people no more don't care. Man, I'm starting at the top. I had a guy that I knew that started, he started a job at the same day that I started a job. So after 10 years, there was a person in the company that was up here, and he got a promotion as my boss after being taken out of a clerical job. He wasn't very good at it in the first place. So he stands and tells me, man, you all, and he's talking about me and the other guy, we were doing a particular job, and we were trained, we went to training and learned how to do it, got licensed to do it. He said, man, you all sure make me look good up in that office up there. He said, you better keep it up, man. He said, man, they just pat me on the back everywhere on the job that y'all doing. I want to go across the desk and kill him, preacher. Because he's getting all the accolades, and we were getting all the work. You know, at that time, I was in the flesh, not in the spirit. But that just goes to show you how long people it is. So he said, hey, I got a couple guys down there working their butts off, and I'm not doing no. I'm doing, man. And the only thing in the office is what he was doing.
It's hard, but part of this showing respect to people is making sure people give respect for the things that they do.
And you should, and they deserve it for what they do, they did that. That's nothing that you did. And a lot of times bosses will pass. We had a workforce that all the bosses got a pay raise, and they sent a letter down stating that the reason no employees got a pay raise because of what the employees is only as good as the bosses. So the bosses deserve a pay raise because that was the brains, that was good, and everything was done. The employees didn't deserve a pay raise because they didn't work hard enough. But they was only good as employees. And I learned that the bosses, the employees ain't as good as their bosses. The bosses are only good as their employees because if their employees don't work, they can't advance. They can't get nothing done. But, you know, sometimes people get things mixed up. In saying that, I'm going to close right here. I'm going to open next week. The headline for that is the warfare of spirit-filled believers. And I've got a lot to go through with that. We'll come across the end of Ephesians. Maybe a week or two at the most. And I'll talk about that when we get to that. Let's see how that goes. I don't know if you remember what we talked about. I'm sure you did.
But we're going to actually,
No, not what we're going next. Probably just maybe taking a week off and
Oh, that's
somebody else
fine, yeah.
preach for a week or two. Or talk, or not preach, teach for a week or two.